Welcome to the E6000 instruction video. The E6000 is the most sophisticated use of computer technology combined with the most advanced knitting machine design in the world. This tape will show you how to unpack and assemble the E6000 and learn the skills of machine knitting.
The videotape is designed for you to learn at your own pace. The tape has built-in breaks so that you can practice or complete a task. When you come to a built-in break, the screen will go black. Stop or pause the tape and complete the task. Also, stop the tape or rewind and review the material whenever needed. Practicing ensures that you will become comfortable and confident using your machine. Have confidence in yourself. It takes everyone time to learn. Most important, have fun and relax. This videotape has been updated to show instructions for assembling the new T601 stand. However, the knitting instruction portion of the tape still shows the old stand model. Some differences may be seen between your stand and the stand shown later in the video. To begin, get a sturdy table and a pair of scissors. Cover the table with a protective pad. It is also good to have the help of a second person when assembling the stand and machine. Open the flat box by cutting the straps. Remove all the contents of the box. Set the parts and instructions on the table. Replace all packing materials and set the box aside. On the table should be two side stand supports, a lower back support, an upper back support, one tray, and two Electra mount supports in a tool and screw package. As shown in box 1 of the instructions, lean the right side stand support R facing in against a table or similar support approximately 60 centimeters high and 85 centimeters long. Take the upper back support and lay it onto the support with the smooth side facing in and the two screw holes facing up. Use two socket screws and washers and attach the upper back support to the right side stand support with the supplied tool. Do not tighten yet. Lean the left side stand support against the upper back support, L facing in. Attach it with two socket screws and washers. Now tighten all 4 screws. As shown in box 2 of the instructions, take the lower back support, smooth side out, and fasten it to the side stand supports. Use a socket screw and washer from the outside and a spring washer and hexagon nut from the inside. It is easiest to rest the lower back support onto a support approximately 28 centimeters high. As shown in box 3 of the instructions, mount the two Electra motor supports with the special screws. Also shown in box 3 of the instructions is how to fasten the tray. Align the holes of the tray with the openings on the right side stand support. Use the Phillips head screws with washers. Box 4 of the instructions shows how to use casters on the stand. If your stand has casters, retract them now by lifting up on one side of the stand and pushing the small catch on the outside of the side stand supports. The catch releases and the casters move inside. For those who have an adapter system to attach the computer console and mast holder to the upper stand, open the small adapter system box. Take out the instructions and parts and place on the table. Set the box aside. Loosen the inside head screw on both holders till the metal plate is loose using the tool. Turn the metal plate so it can slide inside the top back support. Then turn the metal plate vertical. Adjust the distance and tighten the screw as shown in box 1 of the instructions. The mast holder should be 25 centimeters from its outside edge to the end of the right opening of the upper back support. The console holder should be positioned 25 centimeters from its inside to the end of the left opening of the upper back support. This is shown in box 2 of the instructions. When the support is positioned correctly, completely tighten the screws. Cut the straps on the large box. Remove the cardboard cover, styrofoam sections, protective paper, and cardboard inserts at the edge of the box. The front of the bed has 2 arrows on the lower left edge. Carefully take the needle beds out of the box. As shown in box 5 of the instructions, place the machine onto the stand. The 2 white angles on top of each stand support should be between the 2 needle beds. Also, on the left is a screw on the knitting machine that matches the hole on top of the left side stand support. Fasten the needle beds with the 2 C-clamps between the 2 white angles of the side stand supports. The C-clamp with the white yarn clip is placed on the right. Take the small plastic bag out of the styrofoam and remove the brush. Use this brush to dust off any styrofoam or other particles that may have gotten on the parts during shipping. Remove the oil tube from the styrofoam and pierce the end. Never use any other oil on the Passap but the Bellador oil supplied by Passap dealers. Make sure the brush is free of dust. Don't put oil directly onto any parts. Instead, place 2 or 3 drops of oil on the brush. The front and back beds each have 3 horizontal metal strips which run the length of the bed. Brush the oil inside the center metal strips, called guide rails, of back and front beds. This will help the lock move across the beds more easily. Put a few more oil drops on the brush and oil only the bottom groove of the top rails. Add 2 or 3 drops of oil to the brush. Oil the feet of the needles that stick out next to both center guide rails. Oil the bottom guide rail on the front bed. And oil the metal comb on the bottom of the back bed. Take out the folded assembly sheet from the manual. Look at the diagram for oiling the locks. The locks are still in the styrofoam with their underside exposed. The back lock is the one with the brushes on the upper edge. Follow the needle path shown on the diagram with the oiled brush. Take the back lock out of the styrofoam. Hold the lock with the brushes facing front. Fit the white runners of the back lock into the guide rails of the back bed starting from the left. Slide the lock to the right of the needle bed. Take the front lock out of the styrofoam. Remove the plastic bag and oil as done with the back lock. Hold the front lock by the handle with the left end tilted slightly down. Insert the black runner above the center guide rail, with the white angled runner below the guide rail. As soon as it is inserted, tilt the front lock up and slide the white runner into the upper rail. Before sliding the front lock to the right, place the cable on top of the lock. Push the connecting bolt upward until it clicks into place so that both locks are connected. Next, remove the racking handle. Turn the white cam on the racking handle to face the same direction as the handle. Under the needle beds at the left are two support holders for the racking handle. Insert the racking handle with handle and cam up into these two support holders. Snap the handle into the socket. If the racking handle is assembled correctly, the handle turns either direction, moving the back bed and racking indicator. The racking indicator is the small metal arrow at the bottom left of the front bed. It moves either to the left or right. The scale with numbers located on the top left end of the front bed is the other racking indicator. The right black arrow opposite the numbers is part of the indicator also, and is normally opposite the 0. Take the mast out of the styrofoam. The mast has a hole at one end and a hole and slot at the other end. Insert the end with only the hole into the front slot of the mast holder. Carefully take the tension arm with two cables attached out of the styrofoam. Insert the white coupling surrounding the straight cable into the mast so the spiral cable is facing forward. The white plastic joint under the tension arm slides over the top of the mast. The tension arm should point to the front. Remove the tension wires from the styrofoam. Slide the white plastic coupling into the back of the tension arm. The wires should be pointing to the front. Remove the triangular clamp with the two eyelets from the styrofoam. Fit the triangular clamp onto the mast, with the eyelets tilted upward and the teeth pointing up. Slide the clamp onto the mast above the upper notches. Make sure that the cable is secured in the center. Push the clamp down until it rests on the notches. Take the V-shaped bracket for the cups out of the styrofoam and fit it onto the mast above the lower notches with the closed side facing up. Slide the bracket down until it rests on the notches. Slide the yarn cups onto the bracket. Fit the connecting piece of the spiral cable to the support on the left-hand side of the back lock. Slide until it clicks into place. Plug the connecting cable from the front lock into the connecting piece of the back lock. Make sure that the notch on the cable faces up to match with the groove on the back lock. To assemble a 4-color changer, use the instructions supplied, or the dealer may help with its assembly and use. A 2-color changer is used on this video. Take the 2-color changer out of the styrofoam. At the far right, under the back needle bed, there are 2 wing nuts. Loosen these without removing them. Slide the color changer between the machine and the two wing nuts, fitting the screws into the slits of the color changer base. Tighten wing nuts firmly. Take both feeding eyelets out of the styrofoam. The narrow bottom of the feeding eyelet has a metal cap. Above the metal cap are two rings. Insert the feeding eyelet into the color changer holder with the two rings between the two spring clips. Press this holder down. Repeat this process with the other feeding eyelet and holder. Take the computer control console out of the styrofoam. Remove the detachable support bracket by pulling out the spring-loaded pins on both sides. Line up the holes in the arm of the console holder with the metal pins of the computer console and insert the pins into the hole of the arm by letting go of the spring-loaded pins. Lay the computer console against the arm. Take the cable that runs down inside the back of the tension arm and secure it away in the slots of the mast holder, down the back and up on the lower left side. Lay the cable inside the upper stand support and behind the adapter system arm. Insert the plug of the cable into the socket on the top left of the computer console. Make sure that the cable goes to the back of the computer console. After the cable is plugged in, work it down the left groove of the arm and lay it along the marks. Push it into the arm holder as done with the mast holder. Do the same with the power cable along the other side. Take all remaining accessories out of the styrofoam and place these on the tray of the stand. Place the styrofoam sections and other packing material back into the machine box and put them away. It's a good idea to keep the box in case there is ever a need for transporting the machine. The machine is now fully assembled. Next is threading.
The knitting practice pieces on this tape have been designed for a fine 4-ply yarn. The practice pieces will use 2 colors of yarn on cones of 500 grams each.
The Passap E6000 is designed for a wide variety of yarns, such as 2 to 4 ply, summer weight cottons, metallic yarns, fine mohair, baby double knit, and standard double knit. For those with a 4-color changer, program it so the 2 left feeding eyelets are changing automatically. For those with a 2-color changer, at the far right side of the bed is a metal hook, the color changer lever. Pull the color changer lever to the right twice so both feeding holders come up. Press down the feeding holder on the left. Pull the color changer lever once to the right. Press down the right feeding holder, but do not pull the color changer lever again. Move the lock to the far right until it operates the color changer lever. The left feeding eyelet is brought automatically into the jaw of the lock. When the jaw is closed, only the head of the feeding eyelet should be seen. If more than just the head of the feeding eyelet is above the jaw, the yarn will not reach the needles to knit. The color changer is now programmed and will automatically change color every time the lock goes to the far right by tripping the color changer lever. Set the 2 cones of yarn on the floor, under the mast. The yarn on the left-hand side becomes color 1. Take the small silver tool that looks like a needle with an eyelet on each end from the tray. This is the double-end bodkin. Thread the yarn from the left cone into the double-end bodkin. Bring the bodkin with yarn up through the left eyelet of the triangular clamp. Move the bodkin up between the 2 tension discs by pulling the outer disc away slightly. Make sure the yarn is under the small pin in the back. Next, thread the yarn through the lower opening on the left at the other end of the tension arm. Thread down through the eyelet on the very front of the tension arm. Move the lock so the feeding eyelet is directly under the yarn. Thread the double-end bodkin through the feeding eyelet. Bring the yarn from underneath the bed and remove the double-end bodkin and set it in the tray. Secure the yarn tail onto the clip on the right C-clamp under the bed. Bring down the eyelet of the left tension wire to the yarn between the tension arm eyelets. Slide the yarn into the eyelet, making sure it is not twisted around the eyelet and flows freely. To set the tension, pull down on the yarn below the triangular clamp. Pull the yarn down until the tension wire almost touches the front threading eyelet. Let the yarn go. The distance between the tension arm eyelet and the tension wire eyelet should be 15 to 20 centimeters. If it spans a larger distance, turn the tension dial to a larger number. If it spans a smaller distance, turn the tension dial to a smaller number and recheck. Now move the lock to the right to operate the color changer lever. The empty feeding eyelet is in the jaw. Move the lock to the left so that the feeding eyelet is under the tension arm. Thread the yarn on the right in the same way as on the left. Bring the right yarn down into the feeding eyelet behind the left yarn. The left cone of yarn is threaded through the left feeding eyelet to become color number 1. The right cone of yarn is threaded through the right feeding eyelet to become color number 2. Now bring the lock to the right. If the left feeding eyelet comes up, push it back down out of the lock. Move the empty lock a little to the left. If anything covered thus far was confusing, please review the tape or manual before going on. Next is learning to knit with a computer. The knitting practice pieces and garments knit on this tape are simple. Their main function is instructional. Learning the basic steps to machine knitting is made much easier with the computer. The computer has been designed to make knitting more enjoyable and easier. The language of the computer is simple and helps with every step to ensure successful knitting. The computer console has 3 main areas. At the top right is the visual display. This is where the computer speaks. The computer asks questions and gives directions and reminders in this window. Below the display window is a keypad. This is how the operator speaks to the computer and answers questions. At the top and bottom of the console are two horizontal slits. Pattern sheets with self-made patterns are fed into these openings and advanced with the transport wheel at the bottom left. In this way, there is no limit to the number of patterns which can be entered into the computer. On the right edge of the console is the on-off switch. Turn the switch on. Machines which have not been used before or which have not been used for at least 10 days will bring up this display. The computer is saying that there is nothing in its memory. Some machines may have been tested by the dealer recently, and the computer will say wait. In this case, wait for the computer to prepare. The computer is ready to program when the display window says PROGR or Program. If another display appears, press the key with the 3 arrows until PROGR comes onto the screen. The key with the 3 arrows is called the fast-forward key. Should this key be blocked, press Enter first. If the display in the window is not in English, press the R key when the display Program is visible to get to the languages. For those with memory on the display, press the Enter key. This tells the computer, yes, it should memorize or store the upcoming information. The computer will next check which language to speak in. Push the No key for languages not wanted. The computer is asking if it should speak in English. Push the Enter key to say yes. It takes a moment while the computer loads its English language information into the program. The display now says PROGR, which stands for Program. The computer asks if it is to be programmed. To program a computer is to tell the computer how it is to help. Push Enter to say yes. The computer is asking if it should erase any other program that may be left in its memory. Press Enter, yes. The computer is asking what type of cast-on is going to be done. The different types of cast-ons will be explained later. For now, press the number 3 and Enter. The computer asks if these are all the patterns that are needed for this practice piece. Push No. It now asks which is stitch pattern A, or the first stitch pattern to be used. How to select patterns is also shown later in the tape. For now, press number 1, 2, 3, 9 and Enter. The computer asks if this stitch pattern is going to be altered. Press the No key. The computer asks which knitting technique is going to be used. Knitting techniques will also be covered later. For now, press number 183 and Enter. Is the stitch pattern going to be enlarged or positioned on the garment? Press the No key. The computer asks if a test piece of this type cast-on and pattern is needed. Press the No key. Is this all of the stitch pattern information? Press Enter, yes. The computer asks if the garment is going to be formed or shaped. As this is only a practice, no shaping is needed. Therefore, press the No key. How many of the left needles, L for left and ND for needles, are going to be used. The computer reminds that there are a possible 90 needles on the left side of the front bed. Above the center guide rail is the needle scale. Starting in the center, the scale marks the needle positions, 90 to the left and 90 to the right. When setting up the needles, there are two positions. The working position, where the needle heads must be level with the top edge of the needle bed, and the out-of-work position, where the feet of the needles touch the center needle rail. At the lower edge of the front needle bed are the front pushers. Pushers help to achieve the knitting patterns. These pushers are now in the out-of-work position. Take the orange ruler and bring up 25 pushers starting from the center to the left. Align them with the fine marks on the lower half of the front needle bed. This is the working position. When the pusher feet are in line with the lower end of the needle channels, this is the at-rest position. The lock moves the pushers up and down according to the pattern being knit. Press 25 on the computer and the minus sign to indicate that the needles are left of center. Then press Enter. How many of the right needles, R for right and ND for needles, are going to be used? Also, the computer reminds that there are 90 needles available on the right side of the bed. With the orange ruler, bring up 25 pushers starting from the center to the right. Press 25 on the computer and press Enter. The computer asks, "Is everything ready to start the cast on or to start knitting?" Press Enter. The computer asks that the lock be put at the start position. The lock has an arrow pointing to the needle bed. That arrow pointing to the last right gray bar is called start position. Be sure the arrow is not pointing to the right of the last gray bar. By giving the computer this position, the computer can know where the lock is at all times, and all knitting is centered in the needle bed. Place the lock at the start position and press Enter. During the following knitting instructions, the computer asks questions by flashing the message. Answer the question by pressing Enter before going on to the next step. The computer is ready to cast on. Press Enter. Yes. The three bars at the bottom of the display indicate that the computer is talking about the front. The SX is a lock setting. The NX lever is on the left side of the front lock and on the right side of the back lock. The pattern selector dial is on the right side of the front lock and on the left side of the back lock. This dial is used to select the type of stitch. Set the NX lever to N on the front lock. Set the pattern selector dial to S. Then move the NX lever back to X. Press the Enter key. The bars at the top of the display indicate that the back is to be set. On the back lock, set the NX lever to N. Set the pattern selector to G. Then move the NX lever to X. Press Enter. This means to move the lock across the bed once, with the lock empty. That is, with no yarn in the lock. Make sure no feeding eyelet is in the lock Then move the lock smoothly across the needles in working position. This is the symbol for the racking handle in the down position. The racking handle lines up the needles on the back bed with the needles on the front bed. Turn the racking handle down. Check the upper racking indicator. The O on the front bed and the black arrow of the back bed must be almost opposite. Press Enter. The computer asks if the needles on the front bed are set correctly. ND stands for needles. The 3 bars indicate the front bed. Press Enter. Yes, the needles are in the correct position. Move the lock across empty. Put the correct number of needles on the back bed in working position. 25 needles to the right and 25 needles to the left of center are brought into working position. There is a very important rule when knitting, called the needle rule. It must be observed at all times when knitting on both beds. The rule is that the last needle in working position at right is on the back bed. The last needle in working position at left is on the front bed. Make sure that the needles are set up according to the needle rule. Place the edge springs on the last needle in working position at left and right on the front and back beds. When placing them on the needles, it is important to make sure the latches are closed. The needle should flow freely underneath the edge spring. The edge springs, 2 on each bed, must be used whenever knitting to give a neat edge. Press Enter. The computer asks that color 1 be brought into the lock. Take the first feeding eyelet into the lock by moving the lock to the far right of the bed. The lock will automatically pick up a feeding eyelet. Make sure color number 1 is in the lock. If by chance color number 2 is in the lock, change color by moving the lock to the far right to engage the color changer. Press Enter. The computer asks to set the stitch size. The stitch size regulator dial is at the center of the back and front lock. The stitch size is determined by the weight and thickness of the yarn. Set the stitch size dial to 4 on back and front locks. Press Enter. The computer asks to insert the strippers. O for orange color. Insert the strippers into the lock. The stripper holders are found on the back lock. The strippers slide in until the small latch clicks into place. Strippers are used to keep each stitch perfect without having to use troublesome cast-on combs and weights. The orange strippers are used for double bed knitting. Black strippers are used for single bed knitting. To remove the strippers, depress the small white key and pull out. Press Enter. This means to turn the racking handle counterclockwise. Turn the racking handle 1 complete turn counterclockwise. As the racking handle is turned, the back bed moves to the left. Also, there are 2 clicks, one when the handle is up and one when the handle is down. Press Enter. Set the front lock to LX. Remember to always set the NX lever to N before moving the pattern selector dial. Set the pattern selector to L. Then return the NX lever to X. Press Enter. Back lock should be set to N. Set the back NX lever to N. The computer has no more messages. The last message is still in the window and has stopped flashing. If Enter is pushed, the computer will give a current display of the row counter. The manual row counter is on the upper left-hand side of the front lock. It counts the number of rows knit. The three small white knobs above the row counter allow the row counter to be set individually. The small lever to the right of the knobs is to reset the row counter to 0. The trip cam for the row counter is on the front bed. The trip cam is the black narrow piece that slides in the upper guide rail of the front bed. Knit one row by moving the lock across to the left. The computer now says that it is time to turn the racking handle one full turn clockwise. Turn the racking handle one turn clockwise. The display is not flashing, so no communication is needed with the computer. Press Enter to have a display of the row counter. Knit one row. This display says the cast-on is finished or ended. Press Enter to return to the row counter display. Knit 10 rows using even and regular movements to move the lock across the needles. Not too fast, not too far beyond the edge of the knitting. The lock is at the right side of the needle bed when done. The row counter display shows 12 rows. Next is pattern knitting. To do this, press the ABC key. The computer asks if stitch pattern A is the pattern to be knit. Press Enter. Set the front lock to SX. Set the NX lever to N. Turn the stitch pattern dial to S. Return the NX lever to X. Press Enter. Set the back lock to GX. Turn the stitch pattern dial to G. Turn the NX lever to X. Press Enter. Move the lock to the far right of the bed, and the color 1 eyelet will be dropped off. When the lock reaches the end, the second feeding eyelet moves up, ready to be picked up by the lock. Press this second eyelet down so the lock remains empty. Remove the orange strippers. There should be no strippers in place when the lock is empty. Move the lock to the left. Check that the racking handle is down. Press Enter. Are the 50 needles on the front bed still in working position? Press Enter. Move the lock to the right. Notice that 2 of the pushers on the front bed have been pushed down or into rest position by the lock as it went by. The lock is preparing the pushers to knit the selected stitch pattern. Are the 50 needles on the back bed still in working position? Press Enter. The computer message says that 2 colors are to be used and that the colors are going to be changed every 2 rows. Move the lock to the far right to pick up color number 1 eyelet. Press Enter. The front and back lock stitch size remain on 4. Press Enter. Insert the orange strippers, one on each side of the back lock. Press Enter. The front lock should be on LX. Move the NX lever to N. Turn the pattern selector dial to L. Return the NX lever to X. Press Enter. The back lock should be set on N. Move the NX lever to N. The display is no longer flashing, so the computer has no more instructions at this time. Press Enter. Set the manual row counter to 0. Notice that the computer display still reads 12, even though the row counter on the lock has been reset to 0. The computer row counter is always total rows knit from the cast on. When it is helpful to keep a row count within sections of a garment, use the manual row counter. Knit 80 rows. Use even and regular knitting action. Every 2 rows, take the lock to the right and change the color. After 10 rows, reach under and release the yarn from the yarn clip. This will give an even and symmetric edge. Take the lock to the far right and put both feeding eyelets down. Set the locks to N on back and front lock. With the left hand, hold the knitting underneath. With the right hand, move the lock across and back again. The knitting is released from the machine. Break the yarn off the end of the knitting and secure the yarn from the cones into the clip under the bed. This is a finished sample. The stitches are loose on the end of the knitting and can unravel. To keep the stitches from unraveling, thread the loose yarn into a needle and push the needle through every loose stitch. Pull the needle out and fasten the thread. This knitting swatch was made to introduce knitting with the help of a computer. It may be helpful to practice more with this practice piece to become familiar working with the computer. To start again, press the fast forward key. Does the computer need to be programmed? Press No. Follow the instructions of the computer as before. It may be helpful to rewind the tape to Start Cast On and follow along with the video again. Even the most experienced knitter makes mistakes. The E6000 computer is also designed to help with these mistakes. The computer is programmed to give error messages. These messages are listed in the instruction manual, starting on page 182. If the lock gets stuck while knitting, which is not uncommon for beginners, the manual shows how to deal with this problem on page 187. If unraveling is needed, the lock should be put to the right. Then take the color of yarn in the feeding eyelet and gently pull the last stitch to loosen it. The needles may come up as this is done. Continue to pull the stitches out until the yarn is on the right side of the knitting. When the correction is complete, be sure to recheck the tension of the yarn. To continue after unraveling, review the instructions on page 188 of the instruction manual. If there is a difficulty that requires the knitting be started over, press the fast forward key Then press No to the program question. And the machine will be ready to cast on without going through the programming process again. If there are ever any problems that this tape or the manuals do not help with, your dealer has been trained to assist. If the knitting machine is not used for several hours or days, it is best to switch the computer off. A rechargeable battery keeps the old program in memory up to 10 days. The next practice piece will teach how to program more than one pattern into the same piece of knitting. The E6000 is capable of having as many patterns programmed as there are letters in the alphabet, 26. Bring the computer along using the fast-forward key until Program is on the display. Return to the earlier section on computer programming for help in doing this if needed. Press Enter, yes. Press Enter, yes. Which cast-on is to be used? In the instruction manual, there are different types of cast-ons beginning on page 134. The cast-on selected is determined by the type of knitting to be done and also the type of garment being produced. For this next practice garment, use cast-on number 6. Press 6, then press Enter. Is that all the stitch patterns desired? Press No. Which is going to be stitch pattern A or the first pattern? In the stitch pattern book are nearly 700 patterns which the computer has in its memory. The 4-digit number at the bottom of each picture is the number assigned to that stitch pattern. The 3-digit number next to the stitch pattern number is the knitting technique. The knitting technique determines the type of knitting that the pattern will be put on. For this garment, stitch pattern A is number 1119 on page 46 of the pattern book. Press 1119. Press Enter. Is the pattern to be altered? Press No. Which knitting technique is to be used with this pattern? The knitting techniques are shown in the instruction manual. For this practice piece, use number 176, found on page 155 of the instruction manual. Press 176. Press Enter. Is the pattern to be enlarged or positioned? Press No. Is there to be a test piece of this program? Press No. Is this all the stitch patterns to be used? Press No. What is the stitch pattern for B, or the second pattern? Use pattern number 1127 on page 61 of the pattern book. Press 1127. Press Enter. Is the pattern to be altered? Press No. Which knitting technique is to be used with this pattern? Use number 176. Press 176. Press Enter. Is the pattern to be enlarged or positioned? Press No. Is this all the stitch patterns to be used? Press No. Which stitch pattern is used for C, or the third pattern? Use pattern number 1005 on page 21 of the pattern book. Press 1005. Press Enter. Is the pattern to be altered? Press No. Which knitting technique is to be used with this pattern? Use 132. Press 132. Press Enter. Is this all the stitch patterns to be used? Press No. Which stitch pattern is used for D, or the fourth pattern? Use pattern number 133 on page 17 of the pattern book. Press 133. Press Enter. Is this all the stitch patterns to be used? Press Enter. Yes. The computer asks if the garment is going to be formed or shaped. Press No. How many of the left needles are going to be in working position? Bring up 25 pushers left of center on the front bed. Press 25 minus. Press Enter. How many of the right needles are going to be in working position? Bring up 25 pushers right of center on the front bed. Remember to put the edge springs on the last needles in working position on the front bed. Make sure the latches are closed underneath so that the needles move freely. As only the front needles will be used for this practice piece, take the orange ruler and bring all back bed needles out of working position by pushing them down completely. Press 25. Press Enter. The computer says it is time to start the cast on. Press Enter. Move the lock to the start position. Press Enter. Press Enter. Set the front lock to SX. Press Enter. Set the back lock to GX. Press Enter. Move the lock across with the feeding eyelet and strippers removed. Check to make sure the racking handle is down. Press Enter.
Are the 50 needles and pushers on the front bed in working position? Press Enter.
Move the lock across empty. Bring color 1 into the lock. Press Enter. Set the stitch size. On the front lock, set the stitch size to 4 1/2. Press Enter. Insert the black strippers. The black strippers are used for single bed knitting. Press Enter. Set the front lock to LX. Press Enter. The display is no longer flashing, so it is time to start knitting. Knit 4 rows. On the front lock, set the stitch size to 5 1/2. Press Enter. End of cast on. Press Enter. Knit 10 rows. Press ABC key. The computer asks if stitch pattern A is the pattern to be knit. Press Enter. Yes. Set the front lock to SX. Press Enter. Set the back lock to GX. Press Enter. Move the lock across empty. Make sure the racking handle is down. Press Enter.
Are the 50 needles on the front bed in working position? Press Enter.
Move the lock across empty. Notice that the lock moved the pushers in preparation for knitting this pattern. Use both colors. starting with color 1 and changing color every 2 rows. Press Enter. The stitch size on the front lock remains on 5 1/2. Press Enter. Insert the black strippers. Press Enter. Set the front lock to LX. Press Enter. Knit 56 rows. Remember to change color every 2 rows. After 10 rows, release the yarn from the clip underneath. Press ABC. The computer asks if stitch pattern B is the pattern to be knit next. Press Enter. Set the front lock on SX. Press Enter. Set the back lock on GX. Press Enter. Move the lock across empty. Make sure the racking handle is down. Press Enter. Check needles. Press Enter. Move the lock across. Notice that the pushers have been moved in preparation for the next pattern. Put color number 1 in the lock. Change color every 2 rows. Press Enter. Stitch size on front lock remains at 5 1/2. Press Enter. Insert black strippers. Press Enter. The front lock should be set to LX. Press Enter. Knit 64 rows. Remember to change color every 2 rows. Press ABC. Work with the computer as with stitch patterns A and B. When the display stops flashing, turn the videotape on again. Start knitting. After the first row is knit, the computer says that color 2 is to be put in the lock on the next row back to the right. Pick up color 2 with the lock. Continue to knit until the computer says to change the color again. Knit 42 rows following the computer's directions until the row counter reads 180. If the display does not say row count 180, press Enter. Then press ABC to bring up the next pattern. Is stitch pattern D the pattern to use now? Press Enter. Work with the computer to set up stitch pattern D. When the computer window instruction reads KX and is no longer flashing, return to the video. Knit 48 rows and watch the computer to see when the color needs to be changed. When the row counter reads 230, set the front lock to N. Take the feeding eyelet out of the lock. Move the empty lock across the bed 2 times. With the left hand, hold on to the knitting underneath. Break off the yarn and secure the ends from the cones into the yarn clip. With this practice piece, 4 different patterns were done and 2 knitting techniques used. Isn't it easy to find where each is on the knitting? Next is knitting a scarf in 2 colors. Choose other colors if desired, but the yarn should be of the same quality and weight. Bring the computer along until program is on the display. Program the computer using the following information. Use cast-on number 2. For stitch pattern A, use number 142. The needle should be 20 to the left and right on both front and back beds. Bring the 5 extra needles and pushers on front bed out of work position. That is, bring the pushers completely down into their rail. Set the edge springs on the last working needle on both front and back beds. Prepare for the cast-on following the computer information. When the row counter display is in the window, knit 1 row and return to the video. Set stitch size to 3 1/2 on both locks. Press Enter. Set the back lock to CX. Press Enter. Knit 2 rows. Lock at the left. Set stitch size to 4 on both locks. Press Enter. Set the back lock to N. Knit 1 row. When End Cast On shows on the computer window, return to instructions on this tape. End of cast on. Press Enter. The row count will appear in the window as 4 rows. To bring up the instructions for the stitch pattern, press ABC. With the assistance of the computer, continue to knit. When 10 rows of knitting are complete, release the yarn from the clip underneath. Continue knitting until the scarf is the length desired. Next is the cast off. Set the front and back lock to N. Take color 1 into the lock. Knit 2 rows. Move the edge springs out. Hook the eyelet of the double end bodkin onto the needle head of the first needle at right on the back bed. It helps to pull down slightly on the knitting underneath. Pull the needle up as high as possible so the stitch slides behind the open latch. Push down until the stitch slips over the closed latch onto the double end bodkin. Move the double end bodkin so the stitch slides to the other end. Hook the eyelet onto the needle opposite. Slide the stitch onto the new needle by tilting the bodkin up. Do the same with all back stitches. All the needles in working position on the front bed have 2 stitches on them. All the needles now empty on the back bed should be in working position. On the back lock, increase the stitch size to 5 1/2. Knit 1 row, pulling the knitting down. Lock is at the left. Push the front bed up slightly and pull out the knob at the far right side under the bed to lower the front bed. Push the knitting toward the back bed with the yellow tool to lengthen the front bed stitches as much as possible. Crochet off the front bed stitches by inserting the yellow tool with its latch open into the first stitch at right on the front bed. Move the left edge of the first stitch to the second stitch. Insert the tool from above so that the first stitch slides behind the latch. Don't let the second stitch slide behind the latch. Pull the second stitch up through the first stitch until it closes the latch and slides over the second stitch. While pulling the second stitch, always pull in the direction of the next stitch. If it is pulled away from the next stitch, the stitch will pull too tight or drop into the hook of the needle. There is now a single stitch again. Repeat this to the left end of the knitting. Do not worry about the needles on the back bed. Notice that these are not stitches, but are just loops going from one stitch to another and will not unravel. Crochet the last stitch off the left side. Pull the yarn up through to create a loop approximately 30 centimeters long. Break the yarn in the loop. Wrap the end attached to the cone around the NX lever. Pull the other yarn end to tighten the last stitch. To remove the knitting from the machine, use the orange ruler. While pulling down on the knitting, push the needles on the back bed up all the way so the loops fall behind the latches. Slightly push the orange ruler down on top of the needles so the feet are accessible. Angle the orange ruler on the back bed needles with most of the pressure against the rail. Slide the orange ruler across the back bed, pushing the needles out of working position. The needles on the back bed are empty. Repeat with the needles on the front bed, but while pushing the needles up, pull down on the knitting so the stitches are below the latches. Continue as done with the back bed. Release the yarn around the NX lever. Bring it down between the two beds and fasten it in the clip. With the orange ruler, bring all of the front pushers out of work position, completely down into their rail. Raise the front bed by pushing in on the knob. At the same time, push up on the lower edge of the front bed with the left hand until it clicks into place. Bring the lock to the right of the bed. The scarf is knit. To do fringes, cut strands of yarn about 1.6 meters long. Fold the strand 3 times in half and thread the side with the loose ends into the double-end bodkin or a darning needle. Hold the small side of the scarf in one hand and put the needle from bottom up through the edge of the scarf. Pull the needle out, but before tightening the fringe, slide the needle through the 4-ply loop. Put fringes as close to one another as desired. This practice piece teaches how to change the patterns by altering the direction. Program. Press Enter, yes. Erase. Press Enter, yes. Cast on. Press 3. Enter. All stitch patterns? Press No. Which is stitch pattern A? Press 1171 from the pattern book, page 103. Press Enter. Is this pattern to be altered? Press No. The first pattern will be knit without changes to use as a comparison for the altered patterns. Use number 180. Press 180. Press Enter. Enlarge or position the pattern on the garment? Press No. Make a test piece of this program. Press No. Is this all the stitch patterns to be used? Press No. Stitch pattern B. Use pattern number 1171. Press 1171. Press Enter. Alter this pattern? Press Enter, yes. Is the direction of the pattern to be altered? Press Enter, yes. The computer is showing the mirror image of an E. The E is used to represent the pattern. The computer is asking if the pattern's direction should be mirrored. Press Enter, yes. The computer asks if the direction of the pattern is now complete or OK. Press Enter, yes. The computer asks if adding another pattern to this pattern is wanted. Press No. Knitting technique. Press 180. Press Enter. Enlarge or position this pattern on the garment. Press No. Press No. Stitch pattern for C. Press 1171. Press Enter. Alter this pattern. Press Enter, yes. Is the direction of the pattern to be altered? Press Enter. Is the direction change to be a mirror image of the pattern? Press No. Is the altered direction to be the pattern turned upside down? Press No. Is the altered direction to be the pattern in its original form followed by a mirror image? Press Enter, yes. Is the direction of this pattern now OK? Press Enter. Is another pattern to be added to pattern C? Press No. Knitting technique. Press 180. Press Enter. Press No. Press No. Press 1171. Press Enter. Is pattern D to be altered? Press Enter. Is this a direction change? Press Enter. Is the altered direction to be a mirror of the pattern? Press No. Is the altered pattern to be the pattern turned upside down? Press Enter. Is the direction of the pattern now OK? Press No. Is the altered direction to have a mirrored pattern after? Press Enter. Is the direction of this pattern complete? Press No. Is the altered pattern to be one pattern on top of the other with the top pattern upside down? Press Enter. Is the direction of this pattern complete? Press Enter. Is pattern D to be altered by adding another pattern? Press No. Press 180. Press Enter. Press No. Press Enter, yes. Does this garment need to be formed or shaped? Press No. Continue working with the computer using the following information. Needles will be used on back and front beds. Remember to always have the edge springs on the last working needles when knitting. The pushers must be brought into working position, 25 on left and right on the front bed. The stitch size should be set on 4 on back and front lock. When the computer says End Cast On, turn the videotape back on. Press Enter to end Cast On. Press ABC key to receive instructions for the patterns. Continue working with the computer as before. When the computer asks about pushers, return to the video. The computer asks, are the pushers on the back in position? Bend over the needle beds and grip the stud of the back pusher blocking rail on the bottom left. Pull it to the left side, and the back bed pushers are now free to be moved out of the rail. With the orange ruler, bring out of the rail the 50 pushers corresponding to the needles in working position. Make sure that the blocking rail is now closed completely. In knitting, instructions of how to set up the needles and pushers are expressed with a diagram. The diagram scale is a replica or picture of the knitting machine beds. The back bed on the top half, the front bed on the bottom half. A bold horizontal line on the diagram represents the division between the back bed on top and the front bed on bottom. Needles in working position are shown on the diagram as bold vertical lines. Needles out of working position are shown as a bold dot. Diagrams for the E6000 always show all pushers in working position for the front bed. That is, shown with a short vertical bar touching the lower horizontal line. The back needle diagram shows every other pusher in working position and every other one in rest position. The in-work pushers are shown as for the front bed, but the ones in rest position are indicated by a short vertical bar 1 square below the upper horizontal line. Take the orange ruler and push all the pushers to the center between the blocking rail and guide rail. Now turn the ruler upside down and push with the toothed side every other pusher into rest position. Press Enter. Continue working with the computer's help until the BX shows up on the display window. Set the back lock to BX with both arrow keys pressed in. At the far right of the back lock are 3 white keys. Press the outside keys, leaving the middle key up. These keys, when pushed in, move the back pushers up and down to create another backing for the knitting. Press Enter. Knit 88 rows, or 1 complete pattern. Remember to change color every 2 rows. After 10 rows, release the yarn from the clip underneath. Return to the video when the row counter reads 90. Press ABC. Press Enter. Set the front lock on SX. Press Enter. Set the back lock on GX. Press Enter. Press the center key on the back lock to bring all 3 keys out. Continue working with the help of the computer. The stitch size remains the same. When the machine is set up to knit, knit 88 rows. At the end of 88 rows, return to the tape. Press ABC. Press the center key on the back lock to bring all 3 keys out. Continue working with the help of the computer. The stitch size remains the same. When the machine is set up to knit, knit 88 rows. Then return to the video for the next step. Press ABC. Move on to pattern D and do as with pattern C. When ready, knit 176 rows. Then return to the video. The knitting can be dropped off as done on the previous practice pieces, or cast off as done on the scarf. Once the knitting is off the machine, return to the tape. This practice piece introduced the altering of patterns by changing the direction. Check to see how each pattern alteration looks. The first pattern is unaltered. The second pattern is a mirrored image. The third is the original and mirrored together. The fourth is upside down and the original and mirrored combined above. The next practice piece will teach how to change the patterns by adding or combining other patterns to the basic pattern. Program the computer as before. Use cast-on number 3. Pattern A, use number 180, and pattern B, use 1162 on page 71 in the Stitch Pattern Book. When the computer is ready to alter for Stitch Pattern B, return to the videotape. Press Enter. Press No. Is another pattern to be added to pattern A? Press Enter. What pattern is to be added? Press 1164. Press Enter. Is the pattern just added to be altered? Press No. Is this going to be a 3-color pattern? Press No. What is the distance in rows that the second pattern is to be placed above the first pattern? Press 0, then Enter. What is the distance to the right side, measured in stitches, to place the first pattern? For this practice, the pattern should be directly above and not to the side, so press No. The computer wants to make sure that the pattern is not to be placed to the side. Press Enter to say, yes, that is what is wanted. Is another pattern to be added to pattern A? Press No. Press 180. Press Enter. Press No. Press No. Press 180. Press Enter. Press No. Press No. Press 1195 on page 66 of the Stitch Pattern Book. Press 1195. Press Enter. Is Stitch Pattern D to be altered? Press Yes. Press No. Is another pattern to be added to pattern D? Press Enter. What is to be added to this pattern? Pattern number 1180 on page 66 of the Stitch Pattern Book. Press Enter. Is the new pattern to be altered? Press No. Are 3 colors going to be used? Press No. Is the new pattern to be added above the other pattern? Press No. The computer is double-checking the previous question. Press Enter. What distance to the side in stitches is the pattern to go? Press 2 for 2 stitches. Press Enter. Is another pattern to be added to pattern D? Press Enter. What is to be added? Press 1198 on page 68 of the Pattern Book. Press Enter. Is the new pattern to be altered? Press No. Press No. Press No. Press Enter. Press 2. Press Enter. Is another pattern to be added to pattern D? Press Enter. Add 3 more patterns to pattern D as done up to now. The next added pattern should be pattern number 1198. The next time the computer asks add, enter pattern 1180. And finally, add pattern number 1195. When the patterns are all programmed into the computer, return to the video for the next step. Press No. Knitting technique. Press 180. Press Enter. Is this pattern to be enlarged or positioned? Press No. Press No. Press 180. Press Enter. Press No. Press Enter. Press No. The computer is programmed to help with each of the patterns and will help to knit this practice piece. There should be 29 needles to the right and left of center on back and front beds. Remember the needle rule and edge springs. Continue to work with the computer. The stitch size should be set on 4. When End Cast On is displayed, press Enter and ABC. After the ABC key is pressed, the needles and pushers should be set according to this needle diagram. Follow computer information. Knit 20 rows when ready. After the 20 rows are knit, return to the video. Press ABC. Continue on to pattern B. The needle diagram is the same. The stitch size remains on 4. Knit 124 rows when ready. When pattern B is complete, return to the video for information about pattern C. Press ABC. For pattern C, the needle beds remain the same. The stitch size remains set to 4. Knit 20 rows when ready. For pattern D, the needle beds remain the same. The stitch size remains set to 4. Knit 48 rows when ready. For pattern E, the needle beds remain the same. The stitch size remains set to 4. Knit 20 rows when ready. When pattern E is complete, return to the videotape. Set the lock on N, both back and front. Drop the stitches off the machine or cast off as done on the scarf. This practice piece taught how to alter the patterns by adding or combining patterns together. Check to see that on pattern B, the patterns are one above the other. On pattern D, the patterns are side by side. Does the word look familiar? Patterns A, C, and E have no design. They are just to separate B and D. The next practice piece will teach how to change a pattern by enlarging. Bring the computer along as done before. Cast on 3. For stitch pattern A, use number 1149 on page 58 of the stitch pattern book and knitting technique number 180. Stitch pattern A will not be enlarged or positioned for comparison. When the display asks for the information on stitch pattern B, return to the video. Press 1149. Press Enter. Press No. Press 180. Press Enter. Press Enter. Are the measurements to be given in centimeters? Press No. The original pattern will have a height of 88 rows. The computer is asking if this is the desired height. Press No. The height of the pattern is to be multiplied or enlarged how many times? The pattern can be multiplied up to 99 times. Press 2. Enter. The computer is confirming that the desired height is 176. That is 2 times 88. Press Enter. The width of this pattern is 20 stitches. Is this what is wanted? Press No. The width is to be multiplied or enlarged how many times? Press 2. Enter. The computer is confirming that the finished width is 40. That is 2 times 20. Press Enter. The outline of the pattern can be in block form or smooth. By enlarging the pattern, the outline will be more in block form. The computer asks if that is the way it should be. Press Enter. Is the pattern to be positioned? Press No. Press No. Use pattern number 1149. Press Enter. Press No. Press 180. Press Enter. Press Enter. Measurements in centimeters? Press No. The original pattern will have a height of 88 rows. The computer is asking if this is the correct height. Press No. Multiply the height by how many times? Press 3. Enter. The computer is confirming that the correct height is 264. Press Enter. The width of this pattern is 20 stitches. Is this what is wanted? Press No. How much is the width to be multiplied? Press 4. Enter. The computer is confirming that the desired width is 80. Press Enter. The computer asks if the original outline is wanted. Press No. Is the pattern to be positioned? Press No. Press Enter. Press No. The needles should be set up as this diagram shows, with 40 needles to the right and left of center on back and front beds.
The stitch size should be set on 4. Continue working with the computer to cast on. As always, the needle rule and edge springs are important. When the computer says End Cast On, press Enter and return to the video for instructions.
Press ABC. Needles and pushers should be set according to this diagram. For stitch pattern A, the stitch size remains on 4. Knit 88 rows when ready. Remember to release the yarn from the clips underneath after 10 rows. Press the ABC key when ready to go on to the next pattern. Continue on to pattern B. The needle diagram is the same. The stitch size remains on 4 and knit 176 rows when ready. Press ABC when ready to go to the next pattern. For pattern C, the needle and stitch size remain the same. Knit 264 rows when ready. At the end of pattern C, return to the video for information. Set the lock on end, both back and front. Drop the stitches off the needles or cast off as done on the scarf. This practice piece taught how to enlarge patterns. Check to see that pattern B is double the original size in block form. Pattern C is bigger and has smooth outlines. The next practice piece will teach how to position a pattern. Bring the computer along as before. Continue using cast-on number 3, stitch pattern 1311 on page 73 of the stitch pattern book, and knitting technique 188. When the display asks about enlarging or positioning, return to the video. Press Enter. Press No. The original pattern will have a height of 68 rows. The computer is asking if this is the correct height. Press Enter. The width of this pattern is 19 stitches. Press Enter. Is this pattern to be positioned? The intent is to have pattern A starting in the center after 28 rows and repeated to the side. Press Enter. Start the pattern after which row? Press 28. Press Enter. The computer confirms 28 rows. Press Enter. The computer is confirming that the pattern is being placed in the center of the knitting. Press Enter. Is the pattern to be repeated directly above? Press No. The computer confirms that it is not wanted directly above. Press Enter. Is the pattern to be repeated directly to the side? Press Enter. Press No. Press No. Press 1312 on page 73 of the Stitch Pattern book. Press Enter. Press No. Press 188. Press Enter. Press Enter. Press No. The original pattern will have a height of 72 rows. The computer is asking if this is the correct height. Press Enter. The width of this pattern is 24 stitches. Press Enter. The intent is to have pattern B starting after 28 rows, and the center of the pattern move 10 stitches to the left. Press Enter. Start the pattern after which row? Press 28. Press Enter. The computer confirms 28 rows. Press Enter. The computer says the pattern is centered. Press 10 minus to set the pattern 10 stitches to the left. Press Enter. The computer confirms that the pattern is to be moved 10 to the left. Press Enter. Is the pattern to be repeated directly above? Press No. The computer confirms that it is not wanted above. Press Enter. Is the pattern to be repeated directly next to the original pattern? Press No. The computer confirms that the pattern is not to be repeated to the side. Press Enter. Press Enter. Press No. The needles should be set up as this diagram shows, with 25 needles to the right and left of center on back and front beds. Remember the needle rule and edge springs. The stitch size should be set on 4. Press the ABC key when ready to go on to the next pattern. Needles and pushers set according to this diagram. For stitch pattern A, the stitch size remains on 4. Knit 100 rows when ready. Press the ABC key when ready to go on to the next pattern. Remember to release the yarn from the clip after 10 rows. Continue on to pattern B. The needle diagram is the same. The stitch size remains on 4 and knit 128 rows when ready. Return to the video after the pattern is complete. Set the lock on end, both back and front. Drop the stitches or cast off as on the scarf. This practice piece taught how to position patterns. Check to see that on pattern A, the pattern repeats in width and that pattern B is only knitted once, off-center. The next section teaches how to design patterns with the use of the card reader. There is no limit to the height or width of the pattern's design. There can also be several patterns on one card. If several patterns are put on each card, be sure to start each pattern on an odd number row. For more detailed information, see the instruction book starting on page 125. Use the special felt pen included with the machine. A giant stitch has been chosen for pattern A. Bring the computer up to the program display. Press Enter. Press Enter. Press 3 and Enter. Press No. Make sure that the reading knob is on the left side before continuing. Press the period key. Press Enter. Pick up the pattern sleeve. At the top right is a semicircular cutout. The lower edge of the transparent foil is sealed. Insert the stitch pattern drawing into the pattern sleeve underneath the transparent foil. The arrow on the stitch pattern drawing must point down. Align the holes in the stitch pattern and the pattern sleeve. Fix the stitch pattern drawing to the pattern sleeve using the red press studs, flat sides facing up. When using the reader, rest the console on the needle beds so the card has somewhere to go. Insert the pattern sleeve, arrow first, and transparent foil facing forward into the slot at the top of the console. Turn the transport wheel to the rear and at the same time continue to ease the pattern sleeve further down until the toothed wheels grip it properly. Continue to turn the transport wheel until figure 1 appears in the cutout at the left lower front edge of the console. To read another pattern drawing, keep on turning the transport wheel until the assigned row number of the pattern shows in the cutout window. To read the pattern into the computer, slide the reading knob smoothly and not too fast back and forth. Always slide the reading knob to the very end of the slot. Each time the knob is slid across, the display will indicate that a row has successfully been read by changing the row number on the screen. At the end of reading the pattern, the computer will ask if this new pattern is to be altered. Remove the card when finished and continue on as with other pre-programmed patterns. Choose a knitting technique for a two-color fair isle from the instruction manual. Knit the pattern as desired. The card reader allows any design to be put into the computer.
Passap has developed many accessories for the E6000 to make knitting more easy and more fun. The 4-color changer makes it possible to use 3 or 4 colors on each row of knitting. With this accessory, 2 patterns can be superimposed on top of each other to create colorful new patterns. Also, once the 4-color changer has been added to your machine, it is possible to add the Electra motor drive. Knitting a lot of rows can be tiring. With the Electra 3000A, instead of you pushing the lock back and forth, the motor does all the work. It is possible with the complete E3000A accessories to have the motor stop at pre-programmed row counts, or to knit stripes. And the motor will even stop when the yarn runs out to prevent the knitting from being dropped off. Passap has developed an accessory to make transferring stitches much easier. The U100E eliminates the need to transfer each stitch by hand. Just place the accessory on the machine and move it across. The transfer is done. If the yarn purchased is not on cones, Passap offers a wool winder that is very easy to use. And Passap continues to develop more accessories. The Tricot Fit makes casting off easier. Casting off each stitch by hand is no longer needed with the Tricot Fit. Passap regularly publishes fashion model books with the latest fashion patterns for all types of knitting. All these accessories and many more are available from your Passap dealer.
This is the end of the introduction to the E6000 video. The tape has been designed to introduce you to the E6000. But this is only the beginning of the great garments that can be made on your E6000. There is much more to learn and enjoy. Passap offers many opportunities to improve your knitting. These are all available from your local Passap dealer.